welcome to this edition of Small Business Breakthroughs presented by the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. For those of you that aren't aware, the Small Business Development Center, what we do is we provide small business advising services, training services to anyone from I have an idea about business that I want to create to I've been in business for a while and I'm having some challenges, or I've been in business for a while and it's going great and I want it to even be better. So we provide those advising services primarily. Those services are free of charge to the user, and we have a lot of expertise on our team. We have several advisors, and they all have kind of different skill sets and can really bring some expertise to you and your business. So if there's anything we can do for you from a small business development center, we would be happy to do that. Also want to mention our partner in this particular program is the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. We started doing the small business breakthroughs back during COVID when this was kind of the only thing we could do. And I wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to get out, reach out, talk to some experts, share some knowledge with folks, even though we really couldn't get out and about to do it. So the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center has been a supporter and a partner of what we've been doing since day one. I'm actually sitting in my office in the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, and I will say that the deck is it's a great resource for entrepreneurs because you can get space. There's space, and that can kind of fit to whatever you need. So like I said, I have an office. It's kind of a one-person office. There are offices that are bigger. There are offices that are actually smaller. There are cubicles, or you could be a individual that just kind of works from home, comes in as needed, different things like that. So a lot of various options here at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. And the other thing about the deck that I like is that, again, it's full of entrepreneurs. So if you are an entrepreneur and you are having some issues, or you're running into some things, maybe you're running issues on contracts or something else like that, there's probably somebody sitting in the office next to you that has dealt with this before that could speak to you as from a position of expertise because they've done it before. And then obviously we are here at the deck also. So anything that you are interested in learning about the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, I'd encourage you to go to the website, which is DEC, deckindublin.com. We are happy today to be joined by Justin DeBrosse from the Columbus Financial Empowerment Center. And we determined, before we kind of jump in here, we've done a lot of different work with individuals. Obviously, the SBDC has been in Columbus since 1985. We have we've dealt with hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs. And one of the things that we see a lot of times, especially in these earlier stage ones, where they don't have a good understanding of the financials, they don't have what we would kind of call financial literacy. And we started implementing that as, part of what we do. I would say really just before the pandemic, we started doing some different trainings and some different things where we would do some outreach and provide some training and some expertise there, because we knew that for a business, for an individual to be able to go forward, they need to understand their numbers, need to know how to do this. And fast forward to today, and we have the honor and privilege to actually be partners with the Columbus Financial Empowerment Center in providing financial literacy, financial wellness, information, and support. And that is through Justin's organization. So Justin is going to, we're going to talk about financial wellness. We're going to talk about the FEC and how you can, one, kind of prepare yourself in various aspects and various timeframes of maybe your business, and how you can take advantage of the services that they have. So Justin, thanks for being here.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Um, as Mike mentioned, I run the Columbus Financial Empowerment Center. Most of what we do is one-on-one financial counseling. And so, what we found is that there's a lot of great information out here, but then there's always this question of like, well, what do I do? And, we help folks answer that question. So, the difference between learning about how to buy a home and the steps that you need to take to buy a home, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's kind of jump in here and one of the things it's financial wellness is what you're talking about. And I know that I've had the privilege, Justin and I actually did presentations at the same function at CCAD a couple of months ago. And I got to see probably a subset of your presentation because neither one of us
Hmm.
got very much time to do this. But kind of talk about, let's start out, let's talk about kind of the basics. I mean, this financial wellness, kind of give us a sense of how you all look at it and what it means to the individual. Mm.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, so to start, money is something we all have experience with. Good, bad, in between.
Mhm.
We've all spent a dollar, we've all hopefully saved a dollar. We know what all of that feels like. Um, and so, there's a wide spectrum of experience that someone brings into a financial counseling session or just brings into their own financial decisions. Some of us are fortunate enough to have been taught from a young age how to save or how to make important decisions, how have been led in on the process through parents or maybe other folks when the time is right. But a lot of us just kind of muddle through and make decisions. I know I considered myself part of that camp for a long time, made plenty of mistakes, or at least, decisions I would have made differently now. And so, you know, we're here to kind of help folks fill those gaps in knowledge and to be a sounding board, because we all, to an extent, we all know what we're doing with money, and so for us it's less a question of just providing information that someone maybe doesn't already have. It's that, but it's also being a thought partner, helping folks look at decisions from different angles that maybe they wouldn't get to on their own, and just make the best decisions for themselves based on what's important to them and what their goals are, where they're trying to get. So we really sit down with someone, we get to know them. It's important that we get to know folks in counseling sessions because we're very quickly going to move from hello, my name is Justin, to how much money is in your checking account.
Right.
And the people that we work with need to feel confident when they're answering that question. So making sure that we have that rapport and that they understand who they're talking to is crucial.
Yeah, tell us about your team. I think you brought this up when we talked earlier about this and the importance of building that connection. And we have the same thing with an SBDC because we're going to dig into what they're doing on their business, but a lot of times, that also then bleeds over to what they're doing with their personal and different things like that. So tell us the uh, about the center, about the
Yeah,
team, and kind of interactions.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. So we have a team of 4 full-time financial counselors. Uh, that some of them bring a financial background into the work already, whether it's we have one counselor who previously worked as a bankruptcy attorney. We have another who was previously in organizational psychology, so is much more kind of in tune with like the money mindset that someone might be coming into a counseling session with. But the entire team, I mean, A, they're great people. B, they know what they're doing, and C, they all have like very interesting reasons for doing this work. It's not just a job. It's that they've lived firsthand through some financial challenges and want to use their experience to help others, or for in some situations they have formally studied these topics and want to be able to do something helpful with that information. Um, no matter what someone comes in with, what background someone comes in with, uh, they all complete a pretty intensive training. It's about probably at least 60 hours and 3 exams before they're able to meet with anybody one-on-one. And then we also really place importance on that continuing education. So two of our um, two of our counselors are certified by the Association of Financial Counselors. Another has a financial social work certification. And so there's a lot of emphasis put on continuing to learn because the situation is continuing to change, and we want to make sure that we are informed of what's happening right now when we help folks navigate through whatever they might be facing.
Yeah, that sounds great. Um, we didn't talk about this, but you'll learn as we go through today that a lot of stuff we'll talk about you didn't talk about when we prepped.
Sure.
Um, so what you're talking about, you got your team's knowledgeable, is trained well, different things like that.
Hmm.
What about what are your guys' thoughts on like the Dave Ramsey kind of stuff? Um, obviously he's talking about money, he's talking about doing different things like that. I mean, how do you see that being kind of different than some of the things that you
So we're a lot less prescriptive, I think, than what comes out of Dave Ramsey's materials or similar folks. Um, not to say that any of the advice they provide is wrong, um, but they're coming at it from, I think, from a different angle than we do.
Mhm.
One of the reasons that we take the time to meet someone, get to know them at the beginning, is because our goal is whatever their goal is. Our goal is not to kind of prescribe, you do these 5 steps and then you'll begin to see improvement. Maybe we go through those same 5 steps, but we talk about them in relation to how they're going to benefit, the person that we're in front of, and how it kind of directly relates to what's important in their life. Because for plenty of folks, we all want financial stability, but that doesn't mean that we have to, sacrifice uh, self-care, doing something for ourselves, or making sure that we're able to provide for our family. And so it's always this kind of what's the word? Kind of negotiation between, the ideal, like if you were just a robot, here's what you would do, and then kind of the more human side of it, based on, just what matters to someone.
Yeah, I think that's important because I know that with us at the Small Business Development Center, you know, we try to look at what they're doing, and it sounds like you guys are doing the same type of thing. So somebody could go to a YouTube channel or go to other things about business development, how do I start a business, and find stuff that can be helpful to them,
Hmm.
or go to some sort of online training that boom, 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 and it can be helpful for absolutely. But yeah, I think in both cases is that personal touch to be able to say, okay, what are you doing? Where are you at? You know,
Hmm.
we'll still probably implement a lot of this stuff, but we got to determine how we're going to do that. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And one other thing I want to make sure to mention is that everything we do is completely free. We may refer someone to a service that has a cost, but no one will ever make a payment directly towards the FEC paid. We're fortunate that we are completely funded by the City of Columbus. We're a City of Columbus program, and so the only requirements to participate are that you are an adult in Central Ohio and you're willing to show up to your appointments.
That sounds great. That sounds great. So yeah, let's kind of jump a little bit further now. Let's talk about um, budgeting, kind of
Hmm.
that, we have a lot of folks here that and are interested in either starting a business or they have a business and they're trying to figure out, some of the financial pieces. But, both pieces, the personal and the business is critical. You want to talk about kind of that budgeting concept and where that becomes important?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and this I think this is probably largely common sense. So this is one of those situations where we're probably going to affirm what a lot of people already know, but then again, kind of, take a different angle on it. So budgeting at its most basic is, uh, paying attention to what money comes in, what money goes out, and where it goes. Money coming in is generally pretty straightforward. Not all of us have 8 different streams of income, that we need to keep track of every month. It's usually, especially thinking of just the household, it's, 1 or 2 incomes from work. Maybe there is some sort of, pension or other benefit depending on someone's age. Um, but it's generally pretty simple. Uh, Expenses are where it can get really complicated, right? Most of us pay for part of our housing, we pay for part of the food that we eat, we pay for transportation, getting around. Um, but right there is about where the similarities end, or at least the generalizations. Um, I'll we can get to that question here in a moment. So, you know, what's important is to really kind of get into someone's specific situation. So transportation, for example, um, if you own a car versus take the bus, right? Owning a car is maybe a car payment, insurance, gas for your vehicle. It's hundreds of dollars a month. A bus pass, I think, is maybe about $68 a month right now. So that's a different, it's a very different impact on the rest of your budget. Um, and so, whether it's looking at kind of the particulars of your personal finances and making sure you know where all your money is going, and if you have money left over, how much. Of course, the same is true for a business. Um, Again, revenue is hopefully, I mean, at least probably in the startup phase, relatively simple, right? You're providing a service, maybe a suite of products. It's pretty easy to connect the dots from A to B. Expenses can vary pretty dramatically depending on what you're doing. If it's some sort of physical product, it may be kind of seasonal or kind of staggered, not staggered, but like uh, production costs that happen at certain intervals throughout the year. Um, it can vary quite a bit, and so that's where paying attention to what you're spending your money on and what you're getting for that money is going to be really important. Um, as a startup, a lot of the time you just do what you need to do, right? There's a service you need to buy, you need to get QuickBooks, so you just pay for a QuickBooks subscription. You need these supplies if you're in food service. You need to buy more buckets, more pans, more flour, and you just do it. And you know, starting out, that's fine, but you're very quickly going to run into this question of like, how much money am I making from what I'm putting into this? And keeping track of your budget is really crucial to help you in helping you find that answer.
Yeah, I would agree that it's critical that you understand where the money is, what the money's doing, because you may be making money, revenue,
Hmm.
but if you're really not sure where everything else is going, you don't understand the profit, or where I've seen people, especially when they're doing some sort of projection, they'll roll in and it'll be straight line throughout the year. And not saying I guess that's possible, but I don't see that very
Hmm.
often. There's usually
Yeah.
minimum some sort of seasonality. And
Hmm.
depending on if you're making a product and distributing a product, how that works, when you get it, what that works like, or you're doing something else again from a sales perspective that's seasonal, both sides of that equation are going to change. So you really
Hmm.
need to understand what what you're doing with your money going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then to kind of piggyback off of that, um, I just lost what I was going to say. So we can uh, we can edit this for the version that people aren't watching right now. Um, if it comes back, we'll find a way to put it in.
Yeah, that's sure. Um, so we've put the contact information for us. We put the contact information for FEC and specifically to Justin. If anybody, as we go through here, has any uh, questions or whatever, if you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. We do have a question regarding the website. I don't know if you want to touch on that now, kind
Yeah,
of where you're at. Mhm.
sure. So, there's a question about, accepting new clients. And so right now, we're close to capacity. And so, um, you know, the appointment scheduler for the general public, it has been have temporarily shut off. But for specifically for small business owners who work with the SBDC or another entrepreneur supporting organization, we're still able to sign them up for appointments. The best thing to do in that situation is just reach out to me directly. Um, we anticipate that link for people to enroll themselves to open back up here in about a month. So somewhere around the beginning of September, probably. Uh, the good news is, like I said, we're at capacity. It's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. And so we're onboarding a new counselor right now, and they will be available starting in early September once they meet those requirements that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and that's great because again, you're making sure they know what they're doing because you could throw somebody out there,
Hmm.
give them a little bit of training and they could kind of talk, but they're not doing what you guys want done, the kind of service you want
Yeah.
to provide. So I think that's critical. And if that means you've got to back off a little bit, then so be it. I do
Yeah.
have in here the email address, JDEBROSSE at jfscolumbus.org. Correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And just in case I didn't mention this earlier, we are a Columbus program, but we live at Jewish Family Services Columbus. And so that's why I have that JFS email address.
Okay. Great. And also, I said if you are dealing with the Small Business Development Center, we have our startup process for businesses that are starting up. We have Base, BizStart, and we have a variety of other things. And obviously, we have the advising services and things like that. If you are connected with the SBDC and you're wanting to then connect in with the center, then you can also let us know. We'll be able to connect you too. But I think the best way is probably go in there. Ellen Harvey, who's on our team, and let's see here. She says when reaching out to Justin, be sure to select the SBDC as your referring community partner. Again, that's how he's going to know where we're at. And if you do have any questions, like she said here, you can contact her directly at eharvey9@cscc.edu, or you can contact our main email, which is sbdc@cscc.edu, and that'll take you to Teresa Green and just say, we're talking about the want to connect with Columbus Financial Empowerment Center or something along that lines. Just make sure she kind of knows what it is and she'll know what to do too. So, a lot of ways to get connected because again, this is important because again, I've been doing this for 23 years and I've seen a lot of people that get into problems because they don't understand what they're doing and how they need to do this. And, I've seen a lot of people that may even have good ideas but they need to get some sort of seed capital and they're unable to because they've had credit issues and credit problems. So when we talk about the credit and kind of the role of credit for businesses, but when you first start and you're trying to get financing, you're personally signing for everything. So they're looking back at all your personal credit. So talk a little bit about your thoughts on handling, managing credit, and then if you get into problems with credit, what should be maybe some things you think about? Hmm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So just to kind of reinforce your point, um, Yeah, it's your credit that they look at when you're a startup business, your personal credit when determining what they want to loan you and what rates they want to offer to you. Um, and so, it's important to have a good handle on that before you apply for capital. And even aside from small businesses in Ohio, employers can check your credit when determining if they want to make a job offer. Insurance companies and utility companies can look at your credit to determine if they want, well, insurance companies if they want to offer you coverage, utility companies if they want to require a deposit before they will open service in your name. And so, it's the impact of the credit score is really far reaching. Um, with credit, so just to kind of set the stage, 35% of your credit history, or excuse me, your credit score comes from your payment history. So making payments on time is by far the most important thing you can do with any credit that you already have in your name. After that, the amount that you owe, so basically the debt to credit ratio, how much you owe versus how much you could possibly borrow, that is 30%. The length of your credit history is 15%. Credit mix, using different types of credit. So say a mortgage versus a student loan versus a credit card versus a home equity line of credit. That is 10%. And then 10% is also new credit, which, I mean, basically that means when you apply for a new credit, it does cause your score to go down, just because the more credit you use, the riskier it might seem. Um, and so, for a lot of us, mistakes or accidents in the past when it comes to credit can be a pretty big barrier to what we want to do now. Um, Everything on your credit report, with a few exceptions, stays on there for 7 years. So if I missed a payment in 2020, it's still showing up on my credit report when I go out and try to get a new credit card. And so, it's important to know it's important to know what is in your credit history, whether you've run into issues or not. You want to know what someone's going to see when they run your credit report. The next thing that you really want to do, it doesn't make much sense to look backward and try to fix something. It makes more sense to make better decisions right now. So recent credit activity is weighted higher than older activity. So, thinking back to that payment I missed 5 years ago, yes, it's still showing up on my credit report, but its impact is not nearly what it was when that first happened. So what you do now is a whole lot more important than what's happened in the past. Um, I think one of the other things to be mindful of is, again, thinking about a business. When you don't have access to capital for your business, what you might have is a credit card in your name. And so, it's often the case that small business owners will use a personal credit card or multiple to cover expenses for their business. That's depending on the situation. That's not a bad idea per se. But then what can happen is if you do go to apply for capital or some sort of product for the business that requires a credit score, you're going to look riskier because you've got that debt tied to your personal name. And the more, basically, when it comes to the amount you owe, the general idea is the more you already owe, the less likely it is you're able to pay back more, right? So if you already owe $20,000, it's going to be harder to pay back another 5,000 if you take out a $5,000 loan. So, having a good sense of what's on there and not necessarily fretting about what's happened if there is something negative, more kind of paying attention to what to do now is really what's going to be important. And there also is not a quick fix, right? If you have a 520 credit score and you really need something in the 700s, it's just going to take a while. There are ways to, I guess, sort of speed up the process. Like there are specific credit products that are meant to help you build credit. Um, but the one thing you really can't do anything about is that it's just going to take time.
So you had mentioned, and I'm aware of this, so it's not just the credit you have, it's the credit that's available to you.
Hmm.
And, a lot of times with credit cards, you might get a card, you're using a little bit of it, but you got a $20,000 line on there. Maybe
Yeah.
only using a $500 of it.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Mhm.
Yeah. So 30% is kind of the magic number when it comes to considering, how much debt you have. So 30%, as I mentioned, that is the amount of your score that is based on how much you owe.
Okay.
Um, and then uh, both for individual credit cards and for kind of your overall credit usage, uh, when you hit that 30% debt to credit, so let's say I have $1,000 in credit, I can borrow up to $300 or 30% without that having much of an impact on my score. When you cross that threshold, so the closer you get to 100%, that's when it can really begin to knock down your score. Um, and in some cases, the kind of the true value or the amount that you owe may not be that much, right? Like if I have $900 on a credit card with $1,000 limit, in the grand scheme of things, $900 uh, is not an insurmountable amount of debt to pay off.
Right.
But when it looks like to the credit, what it looks like to the creditor is that I'm using 90% of my available credit. And again, that looks riskier, right? They want to make sure that if they lend or if they offer credit to someone, that someone isn't just going to kind of run up their debt and then just walk away or find themselves unable to handle it. And so it looks risky when you borrow close to the maximum amount that you are allowed to borrow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think this is great information, and I think it really hammers home the importance that if you're having issues with credit or if you need to work with your credit a little bit, being able to connect with Justin and his team, because again, they know all of these things and they can help you think through it, because I see it all the time where people, you know, they they don't want to close a credit card because of, you know, this, or they close a credit card and it causes some challenges, or they're, worried about inquiries. Not saying that's not an issue, but,
Hmm.
they're worrying about stuff that may only be, you know, 30% of the equation or
Yeah.
something like that. So if you know
Hmm.
that, then you can make logical decisions on what you're going to be doing next and how you
Yeah.
manage all of that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, um, and then one of the things that when we talk about uh, credit cards for your business, you know, when you're first starting, and depending on the type of business, I mean, credit cards can be usable, but my thought is that if you're going to use credit cards, you have to use them as kind of a line of credit, kind of a short term
Hmm.
kind of thing, and I see where people get into problems where they have a credit card and they buy a longer term asset. So they buy a piece of equipment for their business, and next thing you know, they've got a big chunk sitting on this credit card. Mhm.
Hmm.
And now you got a big payment, forget about the credit score part. You've got a big payment that's impacting your cash flow, the
Hmm.
things. And there's a strong chance that you're going to have a pretty high credit score or credit um, charge on
Hmm.
rate, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think something to keep in mind here is depending on those large purchases, uh, that purchase, the item that you're purchasing may be something that could be used as collateral against a loan itself,
Yeah.
depending on, a variety of factors. So Mike, one thing I don't think I've mentioned to you, so I actually have a small business. I have a 450 pound drum coffee roaster in my garage. I roast coffee and sell it around town. And a new coffee roaster, I bought mine used. It's a piece of metal that gets hot and spins. So, there are plenty of good used coffee roasters out there. But for someone looking for a new roaster, they'd be spending anywhere between, I mean, 20 to $80,000 or more, depending on what they're looking for. And, you know, obviously with something like $20,000, it's not likely that someone would put that on a credit card anyway. But just the same, you know, when financing a purchase like that, the coffee roaster itself has value, right? And so it's, let that be kind of the collateral or kind of the risk associated with the purchase, as opposed to, kind of to your point, a large purchase on a credit card that you're just stuck paying down over months or years.
Yeah, absolutely. Teresa, make a note about the coffee that Justin has.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I mean and I think that's important. And you know, I don't know, you guys do anything with business credit?
No, so we really, in thinking about the work that we do in relation to the SBDC, we are kind of more of the foundational piece of it.
Yeah,
So we don't help a business develop credit per se, but we do help small business owners make sure their credit is in good shape so that they can kind of take that next step.
yeah. So I will say I don't have tons of detail yet, but coming this fall, um, we will be doing some things around business credit, different things like that. So we'll have some things available there for individuals. And I think it's critical to understand that, there is a progression.
Mhm.
There's a progression of you're going to sign, and eventually you can have some things that do start to build business credit and different things like that. That doesn't mean that you're still not going to have to personally sign, depending on the loan, depending on what you're doing, different things like that. Um,
Mhm.
and as a business, it's also important to note um, that now I'm like you have kind of lost it, but but I think from a business credit perspective, um, there are ways to do this. There are processes behind this, and this is something that we are working to bring forward to kind of help people do that because business credit is different than personal credit, and and again, it takes some time to build it, and you have to be able to do that. So we're gonna put some stuff together. It's actually in the works. We had conversations about it the other day. So um, let's talk a little bit about uh, but it's kind of like budgeting. It's a budgeting process, but this developing of financial projections as you go forward. Um, we get a lot of folks that come in, especially at the early stages, and they have a business plan, which is 100% narrative. They don't have any of the
Mhm.
financials in there. So we start working with them on the financial side of this and really getting them to try to determine um, what their financial projections going forward are going to look like. And this is critical as you are building the business because again, it is really in essence it's the budgeting for the business.
Mhm.
Um, what are your thoughts on the best way to kind of think through these financial projections going forward?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll speak to this maybe a little more from kind of the personal finance side of things. But even thinking about small businesses, no one starts a business because they love profit and loss statements, right? No one starts a business because they love revenue projections. They start a business because have a great idea, or there's a service that they provide that they enjoy providing, or understand the value of what they can do. Um, and so, yeah, you're right. A lot of the time, for aspiring entrepreneurs, they have a great idea, uh, But then when it comes to the legwork that it takes and what can reasonably be expected in terms of kind of return on investment or return for the effort they're putting in, that's where there are a lot of questions. Um, especially when you think, I think one very common example is someone who does, let's say, someone who does hair out of their house, right? They do it because they like that doing hair. They like the process. And so, someone may, especially if it's very informal, they may just take cash or Venmo, or they may just put it all on one bank account. And kind of commingling funds like revenue and expenses really creates a lot of just muddiness when it comes to looking at how successful you are. And so I'm kind of getting to an answer in a roundabout way. But one way to really begin to understand, what you can expect in the future is to make sure that there's a clear line between the money that you are spending for the business and making through the business and any other money that you use. Um, you know, if you have a formal business with an EIN, you can support or you can open a bank account under that EIN. If you don't have that, it's still helpful to even have your own personal accounts that just hold business money. Business expenses come from that. Revenue goes into that account because you want a clear line between yourself and the money that you're using to support yourself that is generated by the business. Um, that setup also gives you a clearer sense of what your revenue ultimately is, what money you're making now, and how much, which gives you the opportunity to kind of project
Sure.
out. Depending on the situation, that can be straightforward or a little more complicated, especially, Mike, earlier, you mentioned the seasonality that comes with, certain types of businesses. Like I'll tell you, for the coffee business, we do kind of little pop-ups and things here and there where we offer drinks. I sell a lot more hot coffee in January than I do in August, right? And so, um, part of that you can project out just based on experience. Some of that you'll just have to kind of respond and adapt to as the business grows and then, as you learn more.
Yeah, for sure. The thing about, you mentioned a couple of things here. One of the things we always recommend is that if you're starting a business, you have to have a dedicated bank account for that business.
Mhm.
You know, depending on what you're doing, you know, I don't care if they have a personal account that they're running through, maybe they're doing on the side or something like that. But still, you want all the business stuff to be in the account. And the reason is one, it kind of keeps you on track, gives you a great paper trail because it's pretty clear what's going on and what's happening there. But you mentioned commingling funds. I mean, commingling funds is when, again, you're using business stuff for personal and personal for business and different things like that. I always like to tell the story. I had a handyman one time came in and he had two credit cards. He had a business credit card, he had a personal credit card, and he didn't actually pay attention to what he was paying with. So he may go down to the grocery store and whip out the business credit card and throw the credit card down. And he may go out to Home Depot and pull the other one out. So the problem with that is that from a legal standpoint, if you commingle funds, that is one way that you can get your LLC kicked out. So let's say you have an LLC, you're thinking, I'm cool, I got everything covered, my personal liability protection, different things like that. But if you're commingling funds and something happens and they start looking into this, they could basically kick that out and you could be right back to being a sole proprietor or general partnership, in which case then it's all you. You're the business. Everything's coming here. So all your personal assets will be up, even though you thought that you were protected. So it's really important to be able to manage that and stay on top of that. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about, we talked yesterday about avoiding scams. And if you want to kind of talk about that, because that was kind of a interesting
Yeah.
conversation we had yesterday, because I think we both have gotten some of the same text messages.
Yeah. Just yesterday morning, I got a text about a toll that I owed, and I live about 100 miles from a toll road. You ever present. They're constantly changing. It's not a question of if you're going to be, uh, if someone is going to attempt to scam you. It's just a question of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Um, and so, just a few things to watch out for. Um, you know, Scams will make you. Their goal is to create fear and to get you to do something without thinking about it. So the example that I always go to is, my father-in-law once got a phone call from someone who said they were from the IRS and that a sheriff's deputy was on their way to arrest my wife because she had unpaid taxes. And so they were telling him, we won't do this if you pay these taxes. We will not arrest your daughter. And so there's that fear and urgency, right? You have to pay over the phone right now, or something terrible is going to happen.
Right.
Now he hung up, and it's not because he didn't love his daughter. He knew it was a scam, right? So he kind of knew the signs and was able to really recognize that. I mean, the IRS is not going to call and threaten you like that. The federal government uh, generally will not reach out over the phone when it comes to those types of issues. You'll get something in the mail. But it's important to recognize when someone is trying to get you to act quickly without taking a moment to reflect. It's also important to note, any threats that someone might give you, right? That may feed into that fear and urgency. And they will impersonate others, right? So in that example, this was someone impersonating the IRS. They can also make any number show up on your caller ID. I once got a phone call from my own phone number, and when I answered, I was not on the other end. So you can't trust, you can't trust the number that shows up on your phone unless even if it is something you recognize, right? In some situations. Um, the one other thing I'll say is, you want to look out for odd payment types, right? Like my father-in-law was not going to pay my wife's tax debt with iTunes gift cards, right? Or Bitcoin, right? That's just not how it works. And so basically, if it's anything other than, we'll take we'll take a debit from your bank account, or we'll use a debit card or a credit card. That's definitely something to be suspicious of. Scammers may try to take those types of payments too, but it's a big red flag when it's Bitcoin, a prepaid Visa debit card, a gift card of some sort.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's the other side of that too, where, you're being offered stuff.
Hmm.
And, I always, if it's too good to be true, if it sounds like it is, it probably is. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that you got to look at. Um, the other thing, and this is not scam per se, but I don't know that it's super clear either. When you're listening to the radio, commercial comes on, and the commercial talks about, I had this successful business, and I was gonna talking to my best friend banker that I've dealt with for 30 years, and I couldn't get this loan and all of that. So I then called XYZ company, and I had the loan, $500,000 in my bank account the next day.
Hmm.
It's not that that isn't possible. But you don't know what's going on with the 500,000 piece, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of those types of companies, what they are doing is that they're going to be reaching into your accounts and pulling payments out every day.
Hmm.
It's based on your revenue, it's based on what you're doing there. And it's not that that can't work, but it's important to know what's going on so that, as you are looking for financing, or as you're having financing, and you start to say, I don't need to deal with XYZ bank, I should just go do this. And, I've seen people that do that. I've also seen people that kind of got into a mess with that too, that,
Mm.
it was hard for them to really kind of manage that because it was really based on kind of their intake and outflow on their accounts.
Yeah, yeah. One suggestion I always make is when you're interacting with a service, whether it's that or something else, always ask yourself the question, how do they make their money? How do they make their money, right? Whether it's loan origination fees, interest on a loan, or it's something similar to what you're talking about right there, where it's kind of frequent withdrawals based on uh, business revenue and based on the principal of the loan.
Yeah, for sure. And as it relates to loans, I want everybody to understand this too, to really kind of wherever you are in the process. Um, you've got to be prepared. So when you talk about credit not being a quick fix, getting business credit is not necessarily a quick thing. You're not buying a car. It's going to take a little bit of time. So we've found that a lot of the financial institutions are taking anywhere from 3 to 5 months to be able to truly approve and do the loan. And it depends on where you're going and what you're doing and different things like that. So, you as a business owner have to be prepared for that because that's where we get all these calls. Teresa gets calls all the time. You know, I've got this business and I need to get a loan and I have to have it in 2 weeks or something like that. And it's, you know, it's just not, that's not even realistic. Even if you got everything in line, if you're looking at a different financial institution, you're still going to have all the paperwork. They're going to have to go through it. It's going to have to do different things. So it's going to take some time to get this done. So that's again where this projection thing comes into place because you can now think about, okay, let me look out into the future and see about what's going on. If I need to buy equipment because that's going to let me grow my business and do different things, then great. Okay, where
Mhm.
do we need to do this and how do we need to do this? And, what would that look like? And then, you know, from that perspective, you can go talk to your bank and have a conversation with your bank. It also helps to come in and talk to us because we have really strong financial loan people that know what they're doing and that they can really help you as a business owner understand the process. And I've seen a number of businesses, our partner here, Ellen Harvey, who was on our team, I've seen people come in to Ellen um, really not having a clear understanding of how this process works. And had they not come in and talk to Ellen, because she was able to kind of straighten things out, get them organized, get the paperwork ready, get everything going, and help them understand what questions were going to be asked if they do had to have a meeting. Um,
Mm.
there's no way they get the loan. I mean, zero. So, being able to use these services like the Small Business Development Center, which again, our advising services like yours are free of charge, is going to be really valuable to small business owners. And I encourage them to take a look at that. And if you come in and talk to us, and you've got some credit things, then we'll get you with Justin and his team and kind of go from there. And I'm saying it's vice versa. If you go and talk to Justin and his team and you have a business, how can we
Mhm.
come in here and help too? So, we are working together. We are partners in this process, and we know that it's critical to help small business owners be more successful or get their business off the ground and different things like that because you have to have all the pieces and parts running on the same track here. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. It's been a great session. I always kind of close, Justin. If there's anything, kind of a piece of advice, one piece of advice you would give to the folks that are on here or the folks that are watching the YouTube video and have gotten to this point, what's one piece of advice that you would give them when they're thinking about, uh, their financial wellness. I know that's a big picture.
Sure, sure. Um, so paying attention to the details and being organized is key. Um, you don't have to be uh, in the weeds looking at every transaction if you're able to set up a good kind of structure that you're using your money within. Um, and so, I would say being organized is the most important piece of it. And for those of us who, may find it challenging to be organized, and, I do include myself in that from time to time, uh, make it an iterative process, right? You're going to be much more successful if you have a goal that you work towards over time, as opposed to, just deciding like next week, I'm going to change everything. Start with something manageable, build the habit of paying attention, of putting those changes into place, and then grow the habit.
Absolutely. So, again, thanks for being here. This has been great, great information. We look forward to continue to be able to work with you to help businesses and help individuals, really focus down, get their financial situation under control, and so that they can move forward. So we're excited about this partnership going forward, and we look forward to everybody who is here today coming back next month and joining us for Small Business Breakthroughs. If you are interested, I would go ahead and give us a couple of days and go to our SBDC YouTube account, which is under Ohio SBDC, and check out this session along with the other sessions that are there to help you create breakthroughs for your small business. So thank you very much, and you all have a great day. And I wish you best of luck and success in the future.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Thanks, everybody.